Welcome to PC Hardware Therapy and to today's revisit of the Sharkoon CA-I Mini-ITX case. This case was released 7 years ago in 2014, which is when I also bought it. Although you can only buy this case used today, if you can get your hands on it, it can be a surprisingly good option for someone who just needs to have a light gaming PC tucked away in the living room. Set up in 2003, Sharkoon is a company headquartered in Germany and offers German-designed products like PC cases, power supplies, keyboards, mouse, headsets, and even gaming chairs. Sharkoon currently offers only two Mini-ITX cases, the QB1 and Sharkoon C10, both being the cuboid type cases. While on the one hand they offer so many ATX cases, it certainly feels like their Mini-ITX lineup hasn't received the kind of attention you would expect from them. Now let's have a look at the case. I have the black version here, but it also comes in silver. It is made fully out of brushed aluminium and as a result weighs only 1.5 kilograms. The quality of the case feels extremely good. Having said that, it's easy to get your fingerprints on it and minor scuffs. So you have to be careful if you have this case. It's a small and compact case with only a volume of 12.4 liters, measuring only 225 mm wide, 259 mm high and 213 mm deep. The case comes with two USB 3 ports on the top and two USB 2 ports in the front, along with mic input and audio output and the power button. The case doesn't come with the reset button. The power LED is tucked nicely behind and around the power button, but in all its glory you can barely see the hard drive LED, which is also housed behind the power button. So that's really something that could have been improved in the design. The case supports a dual slot graphics card up to 207 mm in length. The max width of the GPU depends on whether you install a hard drive at the bottom, an SSD or even a cooling fan. You have the option to either fit two 2.5-inch drives or a 3.5-inch drive with a 2.5-inch drive at the bottom. There is one issue though. When 2.5-inch drive is installed at the bottom, there is not a lot of room to shove in the connectors into the drives, even if you use the included rubber washers. Some of the larger SATA cables and power connectors that have little to no flex will certainly have an issue. An ATX PSU is supported in the case with the max length of 180 mm. So you can definitely install a large size PSU. Out of the box, there is no support for an SFX power supply, but you can install it using an ATX to SFX power supply bracket, for which I'll put a link in the description. Now, due to the compact size of this case, you are certainly limited on the maximum height of the CPU cooler to 105 mm. However, if you go with an SFX power supply, it would certainly provide a little bit more breathing room for the CPU cooler. Having said that, even with these limitations, you could comfortably install all stock coolers from Intel and for AMD all the way from Wraith Stealth to Wraith Prism. If you notice at the back of the case, there are holes to install Wi-Fi antennas and a couple of places to put a COM or a VGA port. The case comes with a thin 120 mm cooling fan on the top as an exhaust and the option to install a 60 mm fan in the rear panel. It has perforated mesh at the bottom and in one of the side panels next to the PSU. As you know, hot air rises, so definitely the idea is to exhaust the hot air up top. You can install the PSU in two ways. Either face the PSU fan towards the CPU and use the power of the PSU fan to extract the hot air out of the case, or keep the PSU fan towards the side panel to intake fresh air and exhaust at the back. The two side panels are interchangeable. So in case the PSU is not using this fresh intake, the side panel can be installed on the other side to cool the back of the motherboard where you would usually house your M.2 SSD. Not just the side panels, all panels in this case are removable for easy access to components. Now let's see what I've managed to cram inside this beautiful case. This machine has a Ryzen 5 3600 installed on an Asus ROG Strix B450 gaming Wi-Fi AC motherboard with 16 GB of Patriot 3600 MHz DDR4 memory. I've installed two NVMe SSDs, one 500 GB and one 2 TB, and an additional 2.5-inch hard drive for backup On the GPU front, it has GeForce GTX 970 Mini-ITX, and on the power supply front, there is a CoolerMaster V650 ATX semi-modular PSU and two Noctua fans as an intake, one 60mm fan and one 140mm fan at the bottom. Now without further ado, let's open up these side panels and see what's inside. As you can see, I have installed the 140mm fan at the bottom to have a fresh intake of air, and also a 60mm fan as an intake for the GPU and the CPU. Let's open the other side panel. This is where I have the second SSD installed. Now let's remove the top panel. On the top, as you can see, this is the included 120mm thin profile fan because there is not much room between the fan and the PSU. To remove the bottom panel, you would have to first remove the feet which come installed. So let's do that right now. This is where you can see I have some fan cables, so I'll disconnect that now. And the hard drive, SATA cable and power cable. Now you will be able to see the bottom panel how I have installed. So I have not installed the SSD in that fashion because I wanted to install a 120mm fan as an intake, and on the hard drive that's just hanging with two bolts, but it's pretty strong, the connection. Here you've got the GPU, takes its intake from the bottom. So in my setup I had the intakes all at the bottom and exhaust at the top. Now let's remove the power supply and get an even better look at the motherboard and the CPU. To conclude, even at 7 years old, this case with its minimalistic brushed aluminium design aesthetics, it still looks awesome and hasn't gone out of style. It is a cube style small case which can house a full-size ATX power supply and a dual-slot Mini-ITX form factor GPU. It has minor nuances like clearance on cables for 2.5-inch drives, hard drive indicator being hardly visible, and catching of fingerprints. But they can easily be ignored for a price of less than $45 or euros new, with used prices being even lower. All in all, it has served me well as an eGPU enclosure first and then as a full Mini-ITX enclosure. One thing I forgot to mention is that at the bottom of the case where I installed the 140mm fan, there are no existing holes to put a 140mm fan. So I drilled a hole here, but I could only manage to do on two sides zip ties and on the one end a screw for that fan. So definitely something to keep in mind. This was a revisit of the Sharkoon CA-I Mini-ITX case. Let me know in the comment section if you have or had this case before, what PC configuration did you run inside it, and what cooling approach did you take. If you liked this video, be sure to press the like button. If you want to catch the upcoming content here in the channel where I'll be installing these PC components in another Mini-ITX case, then please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click on that notification bell. Talk to you soon in the next video. Take care and bye for now.